This is the video I threatened to do all throughout Worlds when I knew either JDG was going to win Worlds or be the greatest team of all time, or if they didn't, how would they be framed in history? That's right, like the title says, I think this year's JDG, JD Gaming lineup, Jing Dong as they used to be called, is the best 5-man lineup to ever play League of Legends. So, top lane, 369, jungle, Kanavi, Korean player, mid lane, Knight, ADC, Ruler, also Korean, and then missing as the support player. For my money, this is the team of the year, and I don't actually think it's even that close. So what we'll do is we'll do a quick overview of their year, and we'll go by the most important tournaments, and then we'll contrast them with their rivals, with the other great teams in history. So obviously the most important tournament is Worlds. At Worlds, Jingdong Gaming, JD Gaming, finished top 4. They obviously lost to T1, the eventual champions. So for all we know, they were the second best team and maybe would have been in the final on the other side of the bracket. They did 3-0 their Swiss, or would have come second overall. For all we know, they were second best team at Worlds. Obviously, maybe they could have beaten T1 as well. If you go down here, in the actual Swiss system, they 3-0'd it. The one game they lost was they lost a game to LNG in the best of 3 to decide if you go through to the playoffs 3-0, which they did. Then in the playoffs, they drew KT Rolster, like one of the teams that's more borderline, but you saw in Korea they were very strong in the regular season. They 3-1 them. It was a fairly convincing series overall, even though there was a couple of games KT was in. They went to the semis. In the semis, they beat T1. Like 3-1 might look convincing, but it wasn't a very convincing series. Basically, it was a back and forth series. Like T1 won a game big, JDG won a game big. JDG was in good position in game 3. That was then blown by T1 doing some epic plays. Game 4, some inting by Kanavi, and then suddenly the series is over. So you go and look at this overall. It's not just that T1 outplayed them. They did outplay them at times in the series, but there was also the whole meta angle. Like T1 did have that thing where Kerry was picking the AD supports and had this really weird pool, which by the way, seemingly wasn't just that they decided this is the meta. Seemingly when T1 themselves had that dodgy ass game against Liquid and then just got straight up beaten by Gen.G in the Swiss system themselves, all the way up here, you had this situation where supposedly that made T1 think, like, if it doesn't work using the meta champs against Gen.G, why don't we just pick our comfort, our strength? And then that ended up being what became their path to the title, the trophy, the Summoners Cup, and became everyone else's sort of pivot in the pool as a reference, a reaction to what T1 was doing. So you're looking at this as far and away the worst tournament of the year for JDG, and they still, like I say, arguably the second best team at the tournament. They gave the best team the most convincing series at the tournament, and they also were in the semi-finals. Like, we could have been in the finals. You look at the overall tournament, they did do way worse in terms of games won. They won 8 games and lost 5, which is only a 61.54% win rate, which obviously isn't that high, especially compared to the other tournaments of the year. So after Worlds, you obviously have MSI, which they won. Now, in past years, MSI wasn't super crazy compared to Worlds in terms of parity, because the problem was, not only did you only have one team from each of the major regions, so realistically, even if EU's really good, you only have 3 like elite teams in the world ever at the tournament. But because of that, unless you have EU be really good, most years it's just essentially between Korea and China, therefore that usually is the final. And quite frankly, I would say it's historically more meaningful to win as the Chinese team, hence why EDG and RNG did a lot of big things by winning some of those MSIs. If you're the Korean team, you're sort of expected to win. Like, actually, even coming second isn't really acceptable for you. So I would say LPL are primarily the biggest people who win from this. I would say people like G2 when they won MSI, but obviously teams like CLG and Team Liquid and G2 2017, when they make the final, get like a little bit of a boost there, but it's not the same as making like a Worlds final and nowhere near winning Worlds. But this year, 2023, it is. Because this time around, you have 2 teams from the major regions. So that means already you've got 4 world-class teams between Korea and China. And that's without throwing in anyone from EU, like a G2 who might be really good. So you've got at least 4 teams. So suddenly even the placing starts to matter. And because you can come second, you can be some stud LPL team, but who just didn't happen to win the split. Suddenly you're involved still. So then you add in, it's got double a limb proper best-of-5 series brackets as the playoffs for the main teams, all the top teams that qualify. I think this is the best tournament in League of Legends. I think this is a better tournament than Worlds, even though it's not as prestigious because it's not called the World Championship. It's got a better format. I think it's harder to win. I think actually it's just a better competition. So winning this does do a lot, and especially, this is why I'm so glad this year they changed the format. Otherwise, actually with the old MSI, I'd have a very hard time making this case about JD Gaming. So since they won MSI, that does mean a lot. This was the second best tournament of 2023. So if you go down, once they got to the tournament, it was all best of fives. They won all 4 of their series. They didn't lose a single one. This year, they didn't lose a best of 5 until they lost to T1 in the semis of Worlds. They were able to beat Golden Guardians, sweep 3-0 to start with. Then they beat BLG, the second best Chinese team, 3-0. Then they had the series of the year, 3-2 against T1 in the upper bracket final. That's a must watch. And then you can't quite see it here, so I'll move it over. But then in the final, they played BLG in a rematch and beat them 3-1. So you'll see, not only did they go 4-0 in Series 1, but they won 12 games and they lost 3, and only one team, was T1, got them to a 5th game. Other than that, they won the second biggest tournament of the year, quite frankly, convincingly, and some would even say with relative ease, even though they had that one banger series overall. After that, you go to the LPL. I think the LPL is the best tournament in the world of the domestic competitions. It's even tougher than LCK because of how deep it is. And I think it has a quite frankly sturdier format in the playoffs as well, because of the double elimination component where it is. But then they have all those other matches and they give so many top teams a chance to play. So obviously of the LPL splits, Summer is the most important one because of how you qualify to Worlds. So if we go and look at the Summer split, then this was, by the way, a split that had tons of competition. You had the BLG team, which was mega in the split. They only lost 1 best of 3. They won 15 of them. They lost 7 games and won 30. This is insane stuff right here. They go on 9 series winning streaks. Obviously, they did even more than that at one point in time. Like, these guys are just fucking cracked. You had LNG, who was good in the split anyway, and then became monsters in the playoffs and had like a really deep run. Like, this was actually very impressive. So you look at the overall, JD Gaming finishes second in the split, but this would be first in a normal split, 14-2 record. They only lost twice in best of 3. One was the weird one to Weibo, and then one was to IG randomly. They went 29-7 in games themselves, so they're just murking the games. They're very rarely ever giving up a game here. And then you go and look, then obviously you go to the playoffs, and in the playoffs, they get to start all the way over here because of how well they've done. They meet LNG because LNG just beats Weibo. They beat LNG 3-2. This is where you already saw like, oh my God, that like Zika angle's like actually going to play out. Like they can maybe even do something here, guys. So then you had, they faced BLG, the best team in the regular season. They 3-0'd them, just murked them straight up, get the fuck out the server. Then you might have thought they're going to face BLG in a rematch in the finals like Spring or like MSI, but BLG gets upset by LNG, 3-1 here. So it becomes LNG again, who again gives JDG another 5-game series to go along with that T1 and the early LNG one, again with the whole Zeke angle, but they're not able to do it. And so JDG wins the Summer split, the hardest of the two and the most meaningful of the domestic splits. Then we have the last tournament is obviously the Spring split of the LPL. Still a very good competition, but it can't compare to Summer, and especially not the international competitions. Right, this time around, JD Gaming finished first in the split. They were 13-3. They won 28 games and lost 8. So absolutely fabulous record here. Incredibly strong performance. You see overall, they're just handling everyone. This is the squad that they can just take care of here. Then you go to the playoffs. In the playoffs, they beat BLG 3-2, their main competition at this point in time. BLG's done this epic run when they got Tabe in through the door. They beat them 3-2. EDG is a team that had been strong, but they're starting to fall off. They 3-0 them, just murk them straight up. In the final, they rematch against BLG. They beat them 3-1. So you can see they're winning all the best of 5s, and occasionally someone's getting them in 5 games, but nobody beats them 5 games or otherwise. So if you look at the overall year, this team lost 1 best of 5 the whole year, and it was in the semis to T1. In best of 3 this year, they went 13-3 in the Spring split, 14-2 in the Summer split, and won 1 at Worlds. So that is a 28-5 record in best of 3s, which is 84.85%. So pretty healthy. That's like 33 series played, and they've won 84 of them. So very healthy sample size. And these are against elite elite LPL teams as well, some of the best teams in the world. In best of 5 series play, they went 3-0 in the spring, they went 3-0 in the summer, they went 4-0 at MSI, and they won 1 and lost 1 at Worlds. So they went 11-1 in best of 5 play, which is a 91.67% win rate. Again, we're talking about playing in the LPL playoffs for most of that, and MSI. In all games combined, in the spring they went 28-8, in summer they went 29-7, in MSI they went 12-3, and at Worlds they went 8-5. So for the whole year, in, let me see, in 100 games, it's exactly 100 games they played in 2023, they won 77 of them. So they won 77% of the individual games they played in the entire year of 2023 in the enormous sample size LPL. The MSI with double elim, and then Worlds with a bit more of a janky format, but you all know the Worlds format. It's only the file they didn't play in overall. Now, other teams who could be team of the year, so we can just get them out the way really quickly, it's like you have T1, so T1 won Worlds, the best tournament of the year, but they were 3rd at MSI, so not quite as good. Then in the 2 LCK splits, LCK isn't as strong as LPL, but even so, they didn't win an LCK split. In summer, they were 2nd in the playoffs, and that was after some very close series, and then they were nowhere close in the regular season and had all those nightmare things where Fake went out the lineup, and the team was already a little bit sus anyway. And they lost to Gen.G twice this time around. So that was brutal. They didn't even win 1 like they did in the spring. Then in spring, which was the worst tournament of the year, they finished 2nd in that one too. They were awesome in the regular split, but this is ages ago. And then they beat Gen.G 3-2 in the upper bracket final, only to lose the final convincingly to Chovy, the person we all told chokes, and Gen.G are just not as good. And what about Pays? Doesn't matter. They lost both the splits and MSI, and so all they did is win Worlds. Look, great tournament, but that's all they did. Outside of that, they don't have much to brag about. Then you have Gen.G. I'd argue Gen.G potentially has a better case to be the team of the year over T1. Like, they won both the LCK splits. They won LCK Spring, LCK Summer. They finished 4th at MSI. It's not like T1 did awesome at MSI. And then at Worlds, okay, they only finished 5th to 8th. Okay, they went 3-2 and finished 5th to 8th. So they let themselves down internationally, but they were dominant domestically overall. Then you have BLG. So they were top 4 at Worlds, a game away from the final. They were 2nd at MSI and beat both Gen.G and T1. And then domestically, in the spring, they were in 2nd place and did really well in the regular split. In the summer, they did awesome in the regular split and finished 3rd. And it was only because of a 5-game series. So BLG also having an awesome year. Like, what a competitive year outside of JDG. Then you look at the history of the best teams of all time. Obviously, me, Monty, and Dom just did a piece of content about who are the greatest teams of all time. Like, if we're talking about like who I would have in the mix here, I think we're talking about like 2013 SKT. Remember, they also did then win like an OGN split undefeated when they came home. They won the summer split over the KT. They obviously won Worlds, and you had the one series that was really comprehensively close. Then you have 2015 SKT that could always win from the goal deficit and had amazing team fighting and great like understanding of vision control, and obviously had that run where they lost the 1 game to Ku in the finals, and they just looked like they had the whole meta solved. You could say, I mean, if you love ADC play, you could do 2018 RNG, just a fabulous Chinese team, no Korean element involved. You can have 2019, G2 with the ability to like do mid-game moves. If you want to be really old school, you can go Moscow 5 back in 2012. You could go Dam 1 in, I actually think the 2021 lineup was the best one, but you can go 2022, 2020 as well, as in 2, if you also want to consider that. There's some really amazing teams in history. The problem is, none of these teams completed a Grand Slam, and MSI wasn't as good back then. Like, if you say 2015 SKT was 1 game from doing the Grand Slam, it's true, because they didn't win MSI. Well, MSI was even less impressive back then, and Coma's fucking around with the roster. Like, that's his fault, not ours. Only 2 of the lineups I'm even referencing, by the way, 3 if you add in the damn 1, have even won Worlds. Like 2013 SKT lost the spring split, which was their first split domestically. They barely won summer, and they had a close call at Worlds in the semis. Then they came home and had a domestic split that was really dominant. 2015 SKT had the clutch factor over Ku, but they lost MSI. Yeah, Worlds was dominant, but in the spring, actually GE Tigers, late to be called Ku, were the number 1 team for most of the regular split. The 2018 RNG was very, very good, but MSI was less important back then, and they played against King's Own, not someone like a T1 who have more like, let's just say, cachet at being international champions, and let's be real, King's Own shit the bed. And then the G2 lineup, I mean, let's be real, they didn't win Worlds, and they play in the LEC, which isn't the LCK, which isn't the LPL. It's just not as strong a league. And they all, by the way, they barely won that summer split. Remember the one against Fnatic, where it was the 2-3-2 series that they barely won. So my problem in that scenario is, I also think G2's run doesn't look as good because Team Liquid upset IG. If they'd have played IG and then beaten an LPL team for a best-of-5 series and in the big final of an MSI, that would be huge. Team Liquid somewhat stole some of their thunder. Yes, they beat T1 themselves, but beating T1 and IG would have been such a bigger accomplishment, in my opinion. So you look at this JDG team. Here's another thing. Look at who they beat. How about that? So they've beaten T1 already. The same Team 1, by the way, which was arguably in better form coming into MSI, where they'd been actually quite strong in Korea until the grand final. And actually, a lot of people would have said they should be a team to potentially win this tournament. Like, they had the series of the year in the upper bracket final. The problem is T1 didn't turn up to the final to take the second loss. So for the year, it ends up 1-1 between JDG and T1. But I think if T1 just turns up to that final and beats BLG, I think JDG beats them, and now it's 2-1 for the year, isn't it? BLG themselves, I'd argue third or second best team of the year, depending on what criteria we're using. They went 4-0 in best of 5 against this team. They just won all 4 they played. LNG, they only had to really deal with in the summer, but they handled them twice in 5-game series. KT was the best regular season team in the LCK and all won all LCK as a result. Looked really strong in the playoffs. Heading into the playoffs of Spring, and looked like they could have done something there. They beat these guys at Worlds. Tons of legendary names, future legends they beat. Let's see, this year they beat Faker and Zeus and Kerrier and Bin and Elk and Yagao and Scout and Keen and BDD. You go down the list, they beat some of the greatest players of all time. Then you look at the style that this JD Gaming team played in. I think they're the best team I've ever seen at team fighting, and team fighting has always been and will always be the primary way to win League of Legends matches. Riot were the ones themselves, by the way, who added in this like really explicit like Dragon, Herald into Baron win mechanic. And what did that do for JDG? They're arguably the best ever at doing that. Like, they're insane at converting. What was that stat that within like 3 minutes or 2 minutes 30 of them taking the Baron, they just end the game against everyone? Like, this team is too good. Then you look at how they do team fight, this one style that everyone knows has been the most effective in the history of League of Legends. So 369 is unbelievable at peeling for people and playing the tank in a team fight. Ruler just stays alive, gambles keeping his summoners as long as possible, doing mad damage, finding his angles and his spots while everyone peels for him. Knight looks for some insane flank and holds off, so he's a mega threat, and other people have to like have the fucking summoner and ult economy of dealing with him at some point in time. Missing when he could get it is probably the best Rakan player in the world and would just bounce all over the fight so Ruler could just clean up. Kanavi's a carry jungler who's going to be ahead of the opponent and potentially Clearlove style a threat in the team fight himself. Oh, and by the way, that's all just normal team fights. This team's insane from behind as well. You think of the greatest teams of all time, a lot of them have this factor. You have G2 2019, you have SKT 2015, you have Moscow/Gambit Gaming back in 2012 and 2013. Like, this team can win from behind, they can win from ahead, they can win with team fights of all kinds, they can win through all lanes because 369 can play carry. You can play a more supportive ADC on Ruler. He's actually done it loads back in his Samsung days. And Knight can either play supportive for the jungler to let him carry, or he can play anything he wants, including brute forcing stuff like a Sylas or a Syndra mid, and probably carry off that too. 369 chooses to play tank in this team. Knight could just play greedy and go for lane dominance all the time, but he does pick for the team on Kanavi. Ruler has the godlike Xayah, Zeri, and possible ADC, but he also can play the more boring one. Back in the day, it was the Ashe and the Jhin and stuff like that. You think of the support in the jungle, they are contenders for best in their region and in the world, and every single player in the lanes is a contender for best in his region and the world at his position. Like, this team collectively is an amazing squad of players put together. Stylistically, it works. They work in all ways through the game. They just lost one series ever, and it was really close. And a couple of the games people hinted or did exceptional things on the other team. This is the best team I have ever seen play League of Legends. They are absolutely unbelievable. They had one bad series all year. When I say bad, they still could have won it. It was in the semis of Worlds, and they still won one game convincingly, and were right there in Game 3 and Game 4. Game 3 had 2 signature plays from the opponent, the Rel owner play and the Faker Azir play, individual outplays. And then Game 4 had some egregious inting from Canavi on the Belveth. So you had one loss ever of a series. You were never swept in a series, ever, and the one loss was a close series. Then let's add in, Worlds isn't the be-all and end-all. Especially because T1 didn't win MSI and weren't close to winning the domestic splits. The other teams who won don't have the same dominance, eye test, or stylistic reasons. Like, if you look in the American Football League, its history, you can actually make a case the 2007 Patriots are the best team ever. The record was insane. The personnel was insane. They had both sides of the ball covered. They just didn't get the last playoff in the Super Bowl, and therefore, because they lost to a super streaky Giants team, people now are just going to pretend they aren't the greatest team of all time. Why not? Because they just didn't win one game. They really could be the best team to ever play American football. In Counter-Strike, you could argue Team Liquid 2019 is a top 3 team to ever play Counter-Strike. They didn't win a major, either of them, but they have a 22 series streak that was impossibly good. It puts them up there. Some of the markers in history are way outliers over teams that did win majors and have eras and the greatest of all time. So for me, JDG is the best to ever play this game.
Hey guys, Kajo here, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel. I may never have found my way to playoffs, but I'm pretty sure Thorin's never found the clit. So yeah, enjoy the video.
When I make content, it isn't just me, the mic, and a guest or a topic. It's also me with the support of my whole crew. Who's that, you might ask? The Skrilluminati. That's who. They include Frisky, Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Ahmed Hadjou, Tosh, Tobias Bernasconi, Jensen Goh, Animosity, Thooorin, and you know it if you've heard it before, but if you haven't, a special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Well, if you want to know upcoming topics and guests I'm going to have on my channel, maybe you want to ask me a question to answer in an AMA in video fashion. Do you want to hear one of those long discussions and actually be part of it and be able to ask me questions? Want to find out who I'm going to interview next? If any of these perks or more appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Skrilluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.